Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm talking about the Meze 109 Pro headphone. Pretty much a stunning example of Romanian craftsmanship and design, and honestly I think it's one of the best products to come from Meze in quite a while. So I've had this for a couple months now, I've been loving it for a couple months, and I really wanted some more time with it, so huge thanks to Meze for being patient with me and not emailing me frequently. I like to spend more time with products like this because they're such a special piece. And when you get into the high end, you really just can't listen to something for a few hours and make your conclusions off of it. So this could be a long review. I do have some notes to help keep me on track, but I do love this headphone. So I'm going to say a lot of good things about it, but I'll also keep it fair and objective where I can and do some other comparisons to headphones from $200 up to just over $1,000 just to kind of show you where this stacks up. Now the 109 Pro shares some of the styling essence of the 99 Classic. It looks like a more expensive headphone. It's not that you would think it's another $300 headphone, but in open back form, especially when you look closer. So you can see that the spring steel headband is the same general idea, but it starts to change quite drastically when you look at the side. This is still a beautiful headphone. This is $310. It's a closed back, has tons of bass, very different sound profile. The new one has much better pads, obviously being an open back, and frankly, it's just a more premium product. So I just wanted to show you them side by side because especially when you see the sizing, even the ear cups are larger on the 109 Pro. Now, when you start spending $800 for a headphone, I think the unboxing experience and initial impressions are really important because you don't want to feel like you just dropped a huge boatload of money and you're already getting something sketchy out of the box. It's not just like the sound quality, but I think the perceived quality and feel are really important at this price range. And I kind of glazed over the box. The box is really nice too. It has a magnetic flap to it, has a really fancy design on the front. But when you open this up, they even have a cutout for the zipper to fit inside. It's not like they just wedged a case, which is amazing that it's included into this. Then you have a really, honestly, the manual or brochure has a pretty nice printout of different things and what led to the design and all of this with the headphone. I have so much to talk about with the sound. I really don't want to go page for page, but it is a really pretty manual. So even the zipper system is kind of tucked away. They have this really nice, like, seamless lining to it. So it's all these little things that as you look closer or the more you pay attention, the more you notice. And that's kind of cool. It's not like it's very black and white. You have this really nice pouch. The inside of the case is lined with this like velvety suede type material. Get your 1/4-inch adapter. Now this is what mine came with. This is a review unit, so I don't know if there's different options to configure online. But I have a shorter 3.5 millimeter cable, which has the 3.5 millimeter ends on it, and then a much longer one, and it comes with the adapter. 1/4-inch in America, 6.3 millimeter for the metric side. But they're rubber cables. They're nothing too fancy, but there's no real microphonics with it. I would much rather have a cable that performs well in terms of microphonics. I don't really care what it looks like necessarily as long as it's a good enough cable, and so it's nothing too flashy or anything like that, but it gets the job done, and I didn't have any issues with it rubbing and making noise on my shirt. Now, once you get the 109 Pro out of the box, you're greeted with a lot of things. Just the initial hand feel is just incredible. It's not super heavy. It weighs 375 grams, so there's enough weight to it where it still feels premium, but not so much where it feels bulky and uncomfortable. You have this gorgeous wood finish, which has a satin finish to the top. It's not glossy in any way, so you don't have to worry about fingerprints. And just the way that it's shaped and how smooth it's polished and how it meets up against these velour pads, it feels incredible. These are super pillowy. You have this spring steel headband. This basically, you're not having to size this headphone because of the way the clamp force is. You basically just put it on your head and it'll automatically size to fit. And this gets quite large. So if you have a larger head, this is still going to fit you really well. The ear pad openings are huge as well. So if you're concerned with how it's going to feel on your head, we don't have to worry about that. But just the more you look, you have this gorgeous spoke design, the black mesh grill on the outside because it's an open back headphone. Even the 3.5 millimeter plugs are recessed. So it all looks super high end. Now, on the note of the 3.5, because this is recessed, you can't just buy any 3.5 cable to replace on your own. So if you're looking to get a balance cable or XLR or Pentagon, for example, make sure that it has a very tiny end in order to fit inside. There's no real clear indication shape-wise on the sides to indicate a left and right. You have the left and right mark at the top of the headband here, and then you can see that there's a little bit of a label on the wire, but they angle from the back forward. So some headphones, they put the plug up front and angle forward. Because the plug is so short, you can see that's nowhere close to hitting my shoulder. So as far as like wearing it goes, the wire is not an issue. It never really touches anything. And honestly, the whole build quality, the styling thing, putting it on your head and the way this feels, it's just, you feel like you're getting something amazing before you even connect it and start listening to it. Now, this is the first headphone from Meze where they actually built the driver in-house. It's a 50mm dynamic driver, and the whole goal with any driver is to have very high stiffness and low weight. If it's a very stiff driver, it shouldn't distort, and therefore you typically get less distortion. When I say distort, it shouldn't physically distort. You want the driver to maintain integrity, and that gives you better power handling with low distortion. And then you want it light because you want it to accurately reproduce sound. So I might butcher this, but it's a beryllium coated polymer with a cellulose carbon composite blend. So it's kind of like two different materials. And again, it's doing this for stiffness and weight reduction. So I don't want to make this too technical because you can see all this online. One result of this though, this driver is crazy efficient to drive. It's a 40 ohm driver with 112 decibel sensitivity rating. So you can plug this into pretty much anything and get a strong volume out of it. Now there's another thing that Meze is known for, and it's not just the stunning looks, but that's actually the serviceability. Now these have always been very reliable. All of the prior Meze products are built exceptionally well, but just to take things to another level, everything is user serviceable. There's no glue. There's nothing stuck anywhere where it's a one-time replacement. If you notice, even the screws that are holding the spring steel headband, they're not a proprietary screw. It's not a rivet. It's a very tiny Torx bit. Then you get into the pads, which are just easily pulled apart. And again, you have Torx screws here. Everything you can replace. And Meze will sell you the parts online. So I like that from a long-term ownership perspective. If you're concerned with spending this kind of money and then 2 or 3 years from now, the pads wear out or something happens to it and then you're kind of stuck, well, everything can be replaced yourself and you can extend the life of it. I think when you get into passive audio, products that don't have electronics built into it, they are essentially timeless because they don't really change aside from pads wearing out. So that's why I always recommend when people are buying speakers for their home, splurge on the speakers because amazing speakers will always be amazing. And it's the same idea with this. So having that long-term ownership peace of mind is great. And I do want to commend Meze because they're doing the whole sustainability thing the right way for the consumer. Now, while we're on the note of the whole physical side of the headphone, we talked about build quality, design, the looks, etc. And I kind of alluded to the comfort earlier. You have these insanely pillowy velour pads. And I can say, with pretty high confidence that this is the most comfortable headphone, or at least definitely in the top 3 of most comfortable headphones I've ever worn. The clamp force is a little bit, I'd say on a scale of low, medium, high, it's just above medium. And I say that because I've had headphones that can move around more in my head. They're a looser comfort, and as a result, they don't squeeze your head as much. So because these have such soft pads, it's still very comfortable to wear. If I had to say where I felt the most pressure, it's below my ears, just above the jaw. Now, for just sitting still on a couch or a listening chair, it's just slightly stronger than what my perfect clamp force target is. But if you are ever moving around and your head's going left and right, or you're physically active in wearing these, the clamp force is kind of what you need, because you can look down, you can look around and bang your head if you're listening to rock music, and it's not going to fall off your head. So it's not overbearing in any way. It's not Sennheiser level clamp force. It's definitely softer than that. There's no real way to change it because of the spring steel headband design, but I've worn these for hours at a time, and it's really aided by the fact that it's an open back with velour pads. I never get sweaty in them. It's just such a comfortable headphone to wear. So comfort and quality aside, what would it matter if it doesn't sound good? And I'm pleased to say that this thing sounds incredible. When you get to this price range, you're not so much just getting everything sounds great. You're getting this brand's vision for this model and how it should behave, how it should sound. It's kind of like its own unique flair or special sauce. And as a result, there really isn't one particular product that is going to make every single person happy. And you get to the Sennheiser HD6XX, incredible vocals. The mid-range is amazing on it, but they have a lot of sub-bass roll-off. So people looking for that really strong bass extension, They're not going to get that with the 6XX, even though some people love it otherwise. So it's just one of those things. Now, this, in a simple sense, is it's close to neutral with a little bit of a dynamic punch and slight elevation of bass. And there's some extended treble in the high frequencies, 10,000 hertz and up. So it's not as bassy as the 99 Classic. It's not as warm sounding as the Meze Elite, which I'll be covering down the road. That's an amazing headphone, but it's thousands of dollars. So it has its own unique way of presenting the sound, and I do like the way this compares to many others in this price range that I'll get into. Now, the sound is clean, it's impactful, it's fun to listen to, and one of my guilty pleasures that I like listening to a lot is EDM. I used to grow up listening to EDM, and it was one of those things where when this arrived, I had already had my X Duo XP2 balanced Bluetooth DAC amp. It was connected to my phone because I was using IEMs at the time. This showed up and I was just dying to unbox it. I've been waiting to get my hands on this for a long time. So all I did was unplug my IEMs, I put this on, and I was doing stuff around the house. I had an EDM playlist going, and I was just smiling like all night. And I think that's kind of what's special and important about something like this. It should make you happy. You shouldn't be listening to it, in a grumpy state of mind, trying to pick out things that are wrong. Just listen to music and have fun. And as long as it's not punishing you or ruining your music, you should have a good time. And the way this has that slight treble extension, the 10,000 hertz and up, can be a little sibilant for certain tracks, something kind of sharp or harshly recorded. This isn't going to mask that. But the way, as an open back headphone, the way this punches in the bass region is absolutely insane, especially being an open back dynamic under 1,000. There really aren't many open back dynamic headphones in this price range that have this kind of bass performance. Now you can look at a more expensive Focal product if you want the strongest dynamics. They're known for dynamics, but they're a lot more money. So the bang for your buck factor is there. And I thought this just does such an exceptional job with like electronic music, anything with like synthwave and things like that. It just really adds to it. It brings out a little bit more energy and detail, and you kind of get that emotion that type of music's trying to convey. So right off the bat, I was like, this is going to be awesome. Now looking at the measurements, you can kind of see what I mean. It has a relatively flat bass response, slight elevation to it, but then a very smooth transition to the mid-range, which stays relatively flat. Now there is a scoop in the 1.5 to 2K region, which is kind of similar to the sound profile of the Hifiman Arya, or actually Hifiman planars in general tend to scoop that area out because it tends to, I don't want to say simulate, but it tends to enhance soundstage just by reducing that a little bit. So there's a little bit of scoop there, and then we get closer back to the Harman curve, if you will. So it's tuned fairly close to Harman neutral, but you can see a lift as you approach the upper treble region. That's giving you more sense of airiness and sparkle to the sound. And again, if you have a song that's overly sibilant or sparkly, that's not going to mask that in any way. It's going to run with it. And some things can be a little bit harsh as a result. It really skirts the line of being sibilant, but for a lot of stuff, it's not. If anything, it just sounds more resolving and a more energetic presentation of the same track. Now, I think the treble lift is going to be the most polarizing thing about this headphone, because I think the bass tuning in the mid-range, for the most part, the low to middle ground mid-range is exceptional. When you get to the 2,000 hertz, that scoop isn't that bad. It's not taking away too much of the zing of certain instruments, but it does change the color of the music a little bit. It colors the sound slightly. The issue is when you get anything that has boosted treble, some people are very sensitive to that, and depending on what you're listening to, you will have a different reaction or experience than some others. If your ears are older, whether you're young and you're starting to suffer from upper frequency hearing loss, or as you age, that is a natural thing, this headphone perfectly complements that hearing profile without any EQ, because it's going to restore and bring back some of that extension that you typically lose. If you're finding that a lot of your headphones are darker sounding and they're losing that sparkle and you miss how music used to sound, maybe something like this is your ticket to gain some of that back. Now, this isn't the only option out there, but that's one of the benefits of it. The other nice thing is if your hearing is exceptional in the upper frequencies, it's not overly done so much where you're going to find it offensive. Now, as I describe the sound further, I think it's going to be best to start making more comparisons to other headphones just to kind of paint a better picture of how I interpret the 109 and what makes me like them, or I guess dislike them as well. So I already mentioned earlier, this is not an open back version of the 99 Classic. I think the biggest thing you notice, aside from the reduction in bass, this is more bass neutral, is it is much more resolving from a clarity and detail retrieval standpoint. You hear so much more subtlety to the music on the 109 Pro, which is really beneficial for me because I don't like to listen to stuff too loud. I want to take care of my ears so I can make videos for more than a few years. And having a headphone with exceptional detail retrieval really is rewarding because even at low to moderate volumes, as long as you have good hearing, you just get to enjoy more of the nuances of the music. Now, the 6XX is probably my most used headphone because it's kind of like my benchmark headphone for what you can get for the money. It is very neutral. It has an excellent tune both in the mid-range into the treble. It doesn't really do anything offensive. It doesn't have really powerful, impactful bass. I already mentioned the roll-off is quite significant. The 109 Pro has much more dynamic bass. The texture of the bass is excellent on the 6XX. You just tend to find that you want more of it, even if it's not always delivering it. The 109 Pro gives you more bass comfortably, and it's still incredibly clean. There's good texture to it, but there's definitely more dynamics to the bass than what you get with the 6XX. Then if you boost the bass, it handles EQ really well. So if you want a little bit more of a shelf down low because you just want deeper bass for EDM, hip hop, or whatever you're listening to, maybe you want jazz music to hit just a little bit harder, or I guess deeper, then the 109 Pro can easily do that, whereas the 6XX can't quite keep up at that point. Now the transients are actually really fast as well. That's one thing that stood out because dynamic drivers, or I guess I should say planar magnetic drivers, are known for their transient speed. They're incredibly fast. So if you're looking for like the ultimate attack and decay, typically planars will do that. Now, I think some people are really passionate about liking dynamic drivers versus planar, or preferring planar versus dynamic. This is kind of like a really happy middle ground. It's still obvious that it's a dynamic headphone, but it definitely approaches some of the speed that you get into planar magnetics in this price range. Now, I'm going to be talking about how it compares to these, but I already talked about the 6XX from Sennheiser, which is the same thing as the HD650. Essentially, it's just a cheaper version, US only. The 600 is even more bass neutral. So then I want to talk about the APOS Caspian. I'll be reviewing this too soon. It's an open back dynamic as well, but it has a drastically different sound signature. This, if anything, is closer to the Meze 99 Classic sound signature than the 109 Pro is. This has elevated bass. It carries into the mid, so you have a little bit more warmth and heaviness, borderline a little bit of boxiness to the music, but it's darker in the upper mid-range. So if you find something like the 109 Pro too forward or too bright, the APOS Caspian is kind of a fun open back that it does color the sound. It doesn't sound true to the recording, but it's a fun mix, and I've still enjoyed it. But it's not as resolving or clear in the higher frequencies. You know, if you're looking for the ultimate resolution and speed, this is again more of like the comfy cruiser profile. So I tend to prefer the 109 Pro just because it's more flexible for me, but obviously it's more money. You just kind of have a different sound signature, and it really comes down to preference. Now, one of the advantages of not filming this video right away is the market's typically always changing. New products come out, prices change on existing products, and this is a perfect example. The Arya Stealth. This used to be $1,600 and up when I reviewed it. And now because Hifiman released the Arya Organic, this is now $1,000. And I don't think everyone that's looking at an $800 headphone is going to completely say no to a $1,000 headphone, depending on the performance. So I wanted to be fair and bring this up because this is a pretty exceptional sounding headphone. Now, even though the 109 Pro is less, there are a lot of things I like more on the 109 Pro. The bass is more dynamic, it's more punchy. I find that the presentation of vocals is better. It has the ability to still have pretty exceptional detail and treble extension while also having an intimate vocal presentation. It does a really good job at when the artist voice is supposed to be just dead center and you feel it inside your head, almost like you're in the studio with the artist. The 109 Pro does a better job of presenting it that way. The Arya Stealth stretches things out. The soundstage is exceptional. It's like the planar magnetic version to the Sennheiser HD800S. Those two, I think, have the best soundstage under $2,000. I've never heard anything touch them. So if you're just looking for something that has ultimate soundstage, forget everything else, the Arya Stealth is a better pick. This still has a good soundstage, but not in every single aspect of the frequency response, if that makes sense. I feel like vocals are more intimate, but certain parts of the audio mix that are more airy, especially when you're playing like a game and it's trying to mimic an outside environment, you still get a good sense of space, but when someone's talking to you, it cuts right in the middle more. Now, I already mentioned before that the Arya Stealth has a similar cut in that 1.5 to 2K region. They're comparable enough where I'm not going to nitpick on, which one's cutting more. But what's interesting is this is a perfect example of how two headphones can measure somewhat similar to each other, but have a drastically different sound presentation on your head. Part of that has to do with planar versus dynamic. The size of this planar is coming from a much higher, there's more verticality to the sound presentation. It goes beyond your ear pinna because these drivers are so large. So I think if you're listening to a lot of orchestral music, the Arya Stealth is, I think, one of the few products under $2,000 that can make you actually feel like you're there. And that's a pretty special sound. For what I typically listen to, which has a mix of hard rock, going from heavy metal like, Tool, Chevelle, Korn, and then down to like 80s rock, like Journey, for example, I prefer the 109 Pro. I also like these a little bit better for EDM, only because it sounds more punchy to me. So I'm really happy with the way these sound. I don't think there's really a knockout here, but there are some things that the Arya Stealth does exceptionally well that this can't, and they present things differently. The other thing I'll end with, and I'm not knocking Hifiman here because mine have been fine. I know they don't have the same reputation for long-term reliability and durability that something like Meze has across the board. So there's always that concern as well. Again, mine have been fine, but between it being a planar magnetic driver and, again, not knocking Hifiman, if you look at the reviews, you typically have a little bit fewer issues with the 109 Pro. So now where this gets really interesting is the Audeze LCD Classic, the LCD-X, $1,200, which I know it's a more expensive headphone than the 109 Pro. These things are built like a tank. They weigh a lot more. It's noticeably heavy because planar magnetic headphones have those big magnets that go across, so the weight goes up. Very different sound. I actually, for a jack of all trades headphone, I prefer the LCD-X over the Hifiman Arya Stealth, only because it's a little bit darker and it seems like the bass is a little bit stronger because of that. But I prefer the 109 Pro now over the LCD-X if I only had to pick one. And I think what this does is it has a little bit more of the intimacy. So if you want like a planar magnetic bass, which is that really fast, high texture bass, maybe less dynamic punch to it, but this has a better job of bringing out the intimacy of vocals more so than the Arya Stealth. So I do like these a lot. These also take to EQ exceptionally well. I'm showing these because there really aren't a lot of headphones at $800 that can give the 109 Pro a run for the money. It really punches above its weight for value, but you're still getting this legendary build quality, style, and comfort on top of that. So from a price perspective, when you start looking at all these products that are either less money and noticeably underperforming compared to the 109 Pro, or exceeding the cost, and then you're just picking what flaws you want in the sound presentation, if any. It's not that it's a flaw, it's its own color of sound, so it really comes down to preference, but I think it highlights how strong this is at $800. Now, I know my channel has a lot of people that play video games on it based off the headset reviews and other discussions I've had, so it'd be very fitting to talk about gaming. And the 109 Pro is so good at gaming because it has the bass, it has that dynamic punch, so it sounds immersive. You can play story games and have a blast. I played Starfield on these recently, another blessing of waiting to review these, and it sounds so damn good, because a lot of games, like, you can benefit from that slight treble lift, and it's usually not sibilant or overly sharp. If anything, it's adding to that sense of space and vastness and airiness that certain games benefit from. Now, because of the frequency response and because of the resolution of this, how clear it can produce subtle details, they are also exceptional for a first-person shooter. So if you are playing a mix of, I mean, here's the thing, it's $800. It's going to sound great for gaming for sure, but the performance of this, if you're trying to be somewhat competitive, I'm not saying to buy this over a $200 esports style headset to get even better footstep awareness. What you're getting is something that is untouchable in value for the music performance and comfort combined, then still also doing well for gaming if you should so want a single headphone to do it all. Obviously, you'd have to use your own microphone if you're talking to friends. There's no mic or anything in that. It doesn't really need EQ for gaming. I didn't feel like I had to touch anything. It really comes down to personal preference, but oh my God, it's so much fun. And because these have the velour pads, that's another important thing for gaming or any long listening session, is that long-term comfort. I could play these for hours. In fact, I streamed Call of Duty with these for several hours. Never wanted to take them off. They were totally fine. I can wear them for a long period of time and just enjoy what I'm playing, and that's pretty important. So huge pass for gaming as well. So now it's time to talk about source gear, DACs, amps. What do you hook this up to get the most out of it? Well, let's start with this. This is a $10 Apple dongle. The US version has a 1 volt output, and because these are so easy to drive, it sounded exceptional even with this. So that is another selling point to me, because when you get into more expensive planars, I think they benefit from a better amplifier. It's not really necessary with this. And I have this hooked up to this Y adapter because one of my favorite amps I've listened to these on was the Magni Piety from Niche Audio. Now, this is based off a different amp topology from a company called Shit, but it's a special sounding amp. This was a limited release last year at $150. They only made 1,000, sold out in 3 days. Now there's a new batch, which is why I wanted to bring this up. I think there's like 400 units that got made or something like that. It's $165, but I did the Apple dongle with a Y adapter to this amp, so I'm $200 all in, and that's all I ever needed. This is way loud. It's so loud that you can never drive these at full volume anyway. You're going to damage the headphone or your ears because they're so sensitive. So you don't have to invest a lot. This has a sound presentation kind of in between solid state and tube because of the topology of it. So it's a lot of fun. I already mentioned using the XP2 balanced Bluetooth DAC amp, which was really punchy dynamic amp. It sounded great. I used the JDS Labs Atom Stack. That was probably my second favorite at $200 as well. Very, very clean. I think it's like $220 now, but I don't need anything too strong. Now I use the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic, the Hifiman EF400, Topping DX3 Pro Plus. I mean, I don't want to start listing a bunch of amp DACs. The only one I didn't really like with this was the iFi Zen DAC Air at 100. The one benefit to that $100 DAC amp was it has the X bass. So if you just want a quick press button, get more bass, that's the one nice thing about it, but it's not as clear or resolving on that amp as it is even with the $10 Apple dongle. I think it does better with something as simple as this. So more isn't always better, but you should be able to connect this to damn near anything and enjoy good sound. All right, so wrapping up, if you can't tell, I really do love the 109 Pro, and I don't think when you get to this price range that I like everything in this price range. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's amazing, and we all have different preferences. But to me, the 109 Pro is just doing what an expensive headphone should do. The initial unboxing experience, your first time perception when you drop almost $1,000 after shipment and taxes and all that stuff, and you see the box. It looks premium. You unzip that really beautiful case and you hold something that feels like a work of art. And again, this is under 1,000. It's such a sensory thing, you know, the feel of it in your hand, the weight, the way it feels against your skin between the wood and the padding, the way it feels when you put it on, the satisfying click of plugging it in, this stretchable headband that just, it seems like it's just doing everything for you. You can just plug it in and go, and it really doesn't need EQ. I guess if anything, take a few dBs off the top or decibels off the top and you're good to go. But I don't really think there's many products that executes the total premium headphone experience under $1,000 as well as this does. It sounds phenomenal. It's built like a tank. I know I'm gonna get many years out of it. And if I don't, I can service it. So I just have such a peace of mind, and it's something you can enjoy from day one. So I absolutely love this headphone. I don't really think there's anything to majorly fault it here. I think most people that buy it will love it, knowing what to expect out of the sound profile. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'd love to see it a future one. I have a lot of headphone videos coming out, because I was trying to do them all at a similar time frame to get a good feel. But thank you as always for making it to the end. I hope to see you at the next video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.